reminders to live for today instead of worrying so much about the future, because it's not going to help. You're going to miss out on what today is. I honestly would not trade my life and the lessons and who I'm becoming for who I was before. The change of path. It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend, Brenda, that it is easy. But it's well worth it. It is well worth it when you work through it.
And knowing that you're going through this with your husband, you're not alone in going through this. So what advice can you give to other caregivers who are also dealing with dementia, whether it be in a spouse or even in a parent or grandparent?
Right. Initially, you take on more than you think. You take on more than you really have to. And when life feels really difficult and it feels like you're in resistance or that you're just exhausted, you need to take a step back. You need to remove yourself and just think about, okay, how can I make this situation easier? How can I take care of myself? Because the worst thing we can do is to do something because we think we should. And also to put that other person before your needs, because you won't be around for that other person if you continue to do that. And if you are around, you're going to have anger, or you're going to have bitterness, or you're just not going to be coming from that place of real, authentic, unconditional love. So my biggest piece of advice is, and I'm sure they've heard this before, but if you don't take care of yourself, it's like in the airplane, if you do not put the oxygen mask on yourself, you cannot help your caree. 30% of the spouses die before the one with the dementia because of stress. And the scientists have already proven that over 95% of all our illnesses and diseases are caused by stress. So we are going to live, we have the capability to live longer than that person with dementia. But we also have that capability of helping them to the best of our ability, and that's by helping ourselves first.
So outside of helping yourself, are there any other secrets that you've had for moving forward? You were dealt a pretty big blow.
Yeah.
What has allowed you to accept, what has happened to your family and made you be able to continue on?
When the doctor gave us the news, I was in shock, because here I am in the health field, and I didn't see it. And yet I was buying, brain books, and I still didn't see it. And so I just lost my train of thought there. Extraneous noise. Sorry, Brenda. I just get distracted by all that noise. What do I do? You asked me what I do.
What were your secrets for moving forward?
Going to the very bottom and actually admitting that I was at the bottom, being aware of my emotions, and admitting to myself that, just admitting to myself that I am where I am, that I stopped running away. I stopped keeping myself so busy with things that, and that's what I would do. I would fill my days so that I didn't have to think about or feel the pain. That's what I didn't do. I finally started to feel the pain. I gave myself permission to feel the pain. And then when I finally did that, it was about 2 days later when I woke up to the fact that I have a choice. And I have a choice of staying where I am with my story of being a poor caregiver who've lost all their finances and have to start over in their 50s, or I can let that go and take baby steps. So 3 steps that I took. Number 1, awareness. Number 2, realizing I have choice and freedom to either stay or to step forward. And number 3, to take those baby steps. And those baby steps were, exercising every day, meditating in the morning, getting out a gratitude journal, and writing, 5 things I'm grateful for every night, Learning to receive help from people who would offer it, because actually you're giving them a gift by doing that. Learning to ask. Those are all little baby steps that I chose to take, knowing that, you know what, this is my reality. This is my reality. How can I feel alive again? I was tired of wasting my life because it was I owed it to myself that life is a gift, and I was wasting it by just staying where I was, and that's what I did. Now everybody is going to respond differently, and everybody will reach those points at different times. But I reached it at the 2-year mark. That was 3 years ago, and I did choose to move forward.
Holly, do you have anything else that you would like to add that would help caregivers in the same situation as you, know that they're not alone and that there is a way to continue on?
One of the biggest lessons that I learned, and I would say that that helped me, was when I finally surrendered to what is. So I surrendered to my reality. And it was that moment in the kitchen when I just said, okay, this is my life. Now what do I do about it? And then life got easier. Instead of fighting and trying to control the disease and trying to control the behavior, I actually said, okay, this is it. The only thing I can control is what's going on inside of me. That's where I focused. I focused on, how can I come to peace with this? And I had spent months and years going inward through courses, through time, through meditation, through walking in nature. That's what I did. And then also to be aware of your boundaries, to be aware of your boundaries for yourself, that when people ask you to do things, and be aware of your shoulds. Are you doing it because you really want to? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you having fun? How many times a day do you laugh? Just because we have this situation doesn't mean that the fun part of our life is over. Not a chance. It is, your life can become what you want it to be, but it's up to you. It's your choice.